The car pulled into the driveway, turned right, and disappeared into the street as I stood at the window. I felt very little, which shocked me. Shouldn't I have been more angry? I had just witnessed the loss of 10 years of my life. Surely I should have felt something, or rather than just shrugging my shoulders and thinking, well, I guess I should be looking after the dripping faucet. There didn't have to be anything more. I turned around and made my way to the kitchen, mentally replaying the last 30 minutes. When I got home from work, my wife Peggy was sitting at the kitchen table with a full glass of wine. When I saw her, I knew immediately something had happened. Firstly, she was home before me, which was odd, as she usually got home from work between 30 minutes and an hour later. Secondly, there was nothing to cook on the stove. And finally, the glass of wine Peggy almost never drank. She had something to say to me and asked me to sit down. Before I could answer, I took a beer from the fridge and sat opposite her. I'm sure you can see it, Rob. Something has happened in the last. Things haven't been right between us for 6 months. Why we've grown apart is a mystery to me. Something is wrong, but I'm not sure if it's about you or me. I've tried to talk about it, but all I've heard is that things will get better and that we're just going through a difficult time. I've decided that we need to part ways. I'm talking about a temporary separation, not a divorce, Rob. I think I need some space. I need to go examine my life and find out the reason for this distance between us. You can also use the time to think it's not as awful as you make it out to be. Peck, yes, we have some problems. It's not like that in a marriage, but two people can't solve their problems by keeping quiet and splitting up. Rob, talking doesn't help for you. There's only one problem in our marriage. You think that the fact that we're not sleeping together is the main problem between us. You want me to take my clothes off so you can do what you want with me. But for me, it's about more. I do and want to sleep with you, so we're not doing it anymore because I don't want you to touch me. We're not holding on to each other anymore. Also, I'm not sure why I don't want to be touched by you. I still adore you and love you as much as I did the day we got married. But something seems wrong, Rob. I need some space to resolve this. I need to be alone. So are you going to ignore 10 years of marriage? No, Rob. I just think we should take a break. My belongings are already in the car until I find my own place. I'm going to stay with my sister to keep in touch. I'll call you once a week. I have to go, she mumbled, and stood up. I'll be there at 7. I informed Mary the fact that she turned and left without even a kiss goodbye. Told me all I needed to know. The news that Peggy and I were dating more spread quickly. Most of our friends felt sorry for me and tried to cheer me up. Every week Peggy would call to check on me, and I would reply that I was fine. She would reply that she was fine. When I asked her how she was, when I asked her if she was ready to return home, she would reply that it wasn't her. After 5 weeks of Peck being away, I started hearing disturbing rumors, such as that she was seeing another man. I wasn't ready to accept this. I wanted to believe she was telling the truth when she said she needed some time to herself to collect her thoughts and would then return home. The rumors persisted, however. I decided to investigate them myself. I would inquire about Peck's accommodation, do some research, and put the rumors to rest. But no one was willing or able to tell me where she lived. Either they wouldn't tell or they didn't know, and I became suspicious that something was wrong. One evening, I was eating with my friend Tom and his wife Tanya. I expressed my concern and mentioned I was thinking of hiring a private investigator to track down P and confirm or refute the reports. I had seen Tom look at Tan, who nodded slightly. Tom remark, save your money, Rob. The rumors are true. The vast majority of those who know you know what is going on, but they want you not informing me what exactly. That Adam White moved in with them after Peggy left. Adam White, who the hell is he? I don't even know him. He works with Peggy, and she just moved out to live with him. There is no logic behind this. Why didn't he just divorce me if you're doing that? Why all this nonsense with the separation? You know Peggy, Rob, she developed a strategy and a replacement strategy for a replacement strategy. She has been seeing White for about a year, and I think she has been preparing for her to return home. In case not everyone knows that, but no one informed me what a great group of friends I have. My God, I said I'll find out for myself. Got up, threw my napkin in the middle of the table, and left. On the way home, I thought about what I had just learned. Peck didn't want to be with me, so we had no intimacy for over a year. She didn't want me to touch her, so she hadn't kept me near her for over a year. Also, she had been unfaithful to me during that entire time while I was waiting for it. That my unfaithful adulteress was returning, and that all my friends, my wonderful friends, found out. I stayed home and acted like a fool. Now the wait is over. They just leave me sitting there staring at the walls. I gave Kess Detective Agency an advance and arranged to meet them the next morning. I instructed them to dig up as much dirt as they could for me and told them where Peck and her boyfriend worked. After that, I went home and started making a list of all the things I needed to do to cut off contact with Peck. I would wait until I got the agency report, but once I got it, I would have my list and be prepared. After I had worked through the list, I sat back in my chair and thought about another problem that needed to be solved due to our breakup and Peck's refusal to have sex for a year. I hadn't had sex in about 16 months, even though I had been a totally devoted husband. I was sure I wouldn't be too libertarian anymore. After I found out what Peck had done, I remembered that what Tom had said about Peck as I sat at the kitchen table drinking a beer and thinking about how I could break my long dry spell. She had arranged everything I knew that was true because I had lived with her for so long. That meant to me that she had already made plans based on my reaction, and most importantly, a plan to deceive me if she decided that a life with White was what she really wanted. I could see that she was keeping an eye on me and was ready to use anything against me in the divorce if I went out and had even a short affair. Suddenly, the list I had made seemed pointless because she could have planned my reaction exactly the way I had imagined it. A new list began to take shape. I realized that I had to do many of the things I wanted to do immediately instead of waiting until the last minute. Also, there were certain things I could do to metaphorically turn the tables on Peck and make her bleed. The thought made me smile, and I wondered if she had a strategy for this situation too. As I went to the bank the next morning, went to deposit my check, I examined the safety deposit box that Peck and I shared according to the logbook. Peck had checked the box at least once a week. I could see that she was watching me and that she would strike back if I threatened to attack. After some thought, I took 5 certificates of deposit out of their plastic sleeves, went upstairs, and made a copy of each one using the bank's copier. After putting the copies back in the sleeves, I put them back in the box. Peck would not know that the certificates had been switched unless she took them out of the sleeves to examine them. Knowing that PCK was watching me, I took my passport out of the box and jokingly told the bank teller that I was going fishing in Mexico, while she put the box back with the 5 original certificates of deposit in my pocket. I left the bank. I started going to the bank about twice a week, cashed in a certificate of deposit, paid the prepayment penalty, and buried the money. When I got home, I believed that credit cards could easily lead to disaster, and so believed not to her. The only credit cards in my name were a Visa card with a low credit limit, a couple of gas station credit cards, and an American Express card that had to be paid off in full upon receipt of the statement. In contrast, Peck had a good half dozen credit cards in her name, some with high limits. I made a list of the balances, paid the bill every month, and kept the information, so I knew the limits. After I sat down and made a list of everything I wanted, I went online. Over the next 2 weeks, I used PC's credit cards to make purchases. By the time I left, she would have a lot of kick card debt, and I planned to make sure the debt was substantial. I upgraded to a brand new Dell PC with the latest features, in addition to a digital camera and a state-of-the-art phone that could do everything except make breakfast. I bought a Remington 700 rifle on eBay. Peck owned the house. I had no legal claim to it, as her parents had left it to her. However, both our names were on the account, and we used it as collateral for a line of credit when we bought the hot tub and built the pool. The line of credit stayed, even though we had paid back everything we had borrowed. If I did it right, I could act BEV. She noticed I always wondered why, instead of asking me to leave, she packed up her things and left me in her apartment when she realized we needed a trial separation. Now, I get it. While I was in the house, I was obviously waiting for her to come home. From her point of view, I saw the separation as temporary. I then paid the fine, closed my $40K at work, and withdrew the money. After that, I relaxed in my chair and waited for the PI's results. The only thing I couldn't figure out was how to finish things off discreetly. I couldn't risk anyone seeing what I was doing. I decided to go fishing out of town on the weekends. She knew about my love of fishing, how often I went there, and that I actually went fishing because of the catches I brought home. I didn't think she would hire a PI to follow me because of that. She didn't need to get too involved. After all, I wasn't the idiot in this case. She had been playing with me for nearly a year, hadn't I? Had just gotten home from work on Friday when Tanya called me and invited me to come over on the way home. I wanted to say no, but she persuaded me that it was important, so I said yes. When I arrived, she opened the door and led me into the living room where Tom was sitting in an armchair. He stood up and offered me his hand, which I shook. After that, he asked me to make myself comfortable and wait for him to get Me a beer. Tanya needs to talk to you, Rob, and you should know that I completely agree with what she has to say. He left the room and went into the kitchen. When I asked Tanya a question, she replied, "You're going to need a beer. I have to run a few errands and probably won't be back until midnight," Tom said as he gave me a bath. "Sorry, I'll see you later." I heard the front door open and close behind him as he set off. Tanya seemed to open the conversation as the door closed as you rushed out to us that night after dinner. "Rob, did you listen to us?" She held out her hand and mumbled, "Let me finish." Before I could say anything else, "It still hurts. Even though you were right, I can only defend myself by saying that we really like you and never intended to do anything to you. Since Peck is also one of our friends, things are a little complicated. We had hoped she would pull herself together and go back to them where she belongs. We kept quiet because we didn't know if your love for her was enough to forgive her, even though we know you do, or at least have done in the past. You wouldn't have to worry about forgetting or forgiving when you two are reunited. We apologize for that. But that is not the only reason why Tom and I wanted you to visit us, Rob. We are familiar with you and your character any more than you would rob a bank. Would you cheat on your wife? How much time has passed since your last sexual encounter?" That was a surprising question. For the first time, I noticed Tanya's outfit: a short skirt, high heels that accentuated her amazing legs, and a low-cut top that showed off her ample breasts. Look, asked if I was a boyfriend or not. I couldn't help but feel tense, and I thought about Tom's comment, "I'm 100% in," and a plan for the future was taking shape. I whispered to her that a year and a half had passed. I saw her say quietly, "I'd like to change that, Rob," as she leaned closer to me. "Tanya, my boyfriend is Tom. I can't hurt him like that." She grabbed my hand and pulled me back as I tried to get up. "Rob, Tom doesn't mind. He left to give us some privacy." "Rob, this isn't about pity sex or pity sex. I've been talking to Tom about this for months. I hope I can help you and you can help us because you have something we need. I don't understand, to be honest, Rob. We want a child, but Tom is infertile. That's what we want from you." I was stunned. I sat there looking at her in shock. "You just said I wouldn't cheat on Peck," I replied. Finally finding my voice, she put her hand on the bulge in my pants and mumbled, "Yes, but that was before they found out what Peck was up to. You are aware that you are no longer bound by the promises you made to her. But why, instead of an anonymous donation, we would prefer it to be someone we know. The father should also be involved in the child's life. As Uncle Rob, you would be the godfather and always there." "Tanya, that is completely ridiculous." "But that is it. What if Tom and I have an incident? Uncle Rob would be the best person to look after the child, but could we rely on an anonymous donor in the unlikely event that the child needs a liver transplant or something similar? Would you help us even if we found a donor? How long would it take to find a suitable donor? If we were put on a waiting list?" "No, we have considered that. We want you to be part of our family." "You do, and want to tell me you don't find me attractive?" Or she continued with a cheerful grin. "That speaks volumes about your reaction," she added, and squeezed the tight bulge in my pants before she knelt in front of me and unzipped my zipper. "It has its advantages, being the father of my child, Rob," she noticed. "To make sure I get pregnant, we need to make lots of love. You won't be limited to the times I'm most fertile. I won't even tell you when those days are. To be exact, you haven't had sex in a long time, Rob, and it could be weeks. We will support each other," she continued. I tried to distance myself from Tanya by telling her that after such a long break I wouldn't be here much longer, but she clung tightly to me. Her movements became faster and more methodical. I moaned, "I'm going crazy," and she clung to me even tighter with the added pressure. I lost it. She cleaned up as I started to relax and remarked with a mischievous smile, "Now we can go to the bedroom and seriously make a baby." The moment I let go, my last reservations disappeared. I stood up and followed her into the bedroom. Tanya lay down on the bed while we undressed. "After what I have, I'm more open to your essence. When the passion is stronger, no romantic loving nonsense. Rob, treat me like a woman you really want and can't resist. Make me scream, make me beg, make my blood boil," she said. "Come closer. I'd love to feel you." I stood up on the bed. Tanya made sure nothing was wasted by adjusting the pillow beneath her after the second time, which took longer than the first. The sight of her regained my resolve, and soon I was ready again. She pressed herself against me, her fingers wrapped around my back, and we shared the moment. In the next, even more intense round, we ended exhausted but satisfied, and she turned to me with a cheeky twinkle in her eyes. After she had adjusted the pillow, she smiled teasingly and added, "One more time, Rob. I'm driving Bev." I was on the way home. I gave Tanya a drink, and she gave me one and begged for what I had just had. Bev, I was walking out the door. She's used to 3 or 4 sleeps a week, and if he agrees to our agreement, I will give him a drink. I'll give it to him every day. May, I'm pregnant, please call me tomorrow. On the drive home, I kept thinking about what had just happened as I pulled into the driveway. I thought that maybe PEG would see that I was visiting Tom and Tanya, and that she would see that Tom was gone and that I had been there for a couple of hours. The next morning, I called Tanya and told her about my worries. She informed me that Tom had not actually left, and that I should not worry. In fact, he had gone down to his workshop in the basement and stayed there until I left. After I found out I was a little unsettled, sleeping with Tanya while Tom was not home was one thing, but could I do it in his presence? Tanya must have figured out what I was thinking, because she assured me that everything would be okay. I swear later that day Tom called me and asked me to go for a drink with him after work. Sitting across from a man you have known for 20 years who is a good friend and whose wife you have recently had sex with felt a little strange. He must have known what I was thinking, because he got straight to the point and I had his full consent. Rob, I understand how uncomfortable this is for her. I even know that it is uncomfortable for me too, but I need to talk to you about our current situation. I agree with all of this, as I said when I left you, and Tanya alone. Tanya didn't tell you the whole truth, although she didn't tell you everything. Knows that. She spoke to you about wanting children and my infertility. To be honest, my boyfriend, I am not able to have sex. It has been more than a year since I was able to sleep with Tanya. Oh my goodness. That explained the reason for her intense passion last night, which she had suppressed for a while. She also covered up Tom's inability by telling me she didn't want to harm him. She didn't want me to think less of him as a man, so she kept the fact that he was impotent from me. How she and Pac are different from each other. While Pac only ever thought about herself, Tanya put Tom first, even in difficult situations. Tom continued, I don't know if you noticed last night, but Tanya is a very passionate woman. It made her mad that I can't perform shop. She did everything she could to pull herself together, but at some point she wanted to cheat on me. That may sound harsh, but there was no denying it. She will stop at nothing to hide her adultery from me, and I know that she loves me. How could I have missed that? She wouldn't have been so irritable if she had slept with someone. Then it would have been obvious. Rob, I adore her. My whole life revolves around this woman. The problem is that I would simply die without her. I couldn't live with her. If she secretly cheated on me, I could understand her motives, but I couldn't tolerate this kind of dishonesty. The only way to solve the problem, in my opinion, was to be open, since I know that she is with someone else. Tanya is not the kind of woman who would agree to take a lover into the bedroom while I watch TV in the living room in a motel room. She could certainly do it with a stranger without me knowing, but she can't do it with just one person while I am, and then move on to someone else the next week and someone else the week after that. We needed a steady partner that we were both comfortable with and could take care of. We sat down and made a list of possible suitors, but couldn't agree. We were worried that if we started with them and Peck came back home, everything would stop and we would have to start over. But we kept coming back to them, and don't worry, Pete will come back to them eventually. P will quickly find out that Adam White is an idiot, as everyone who knows him knows. She will return to them believing that they know nothing of their activities. Why she thinks they are so ignorant is beyond me. I can only assume that she thinks you love her so much that you don't even consider the possibility that she is up to something. I couldn't help but grin as that was the case. She is basically right. I only realized something was wrong when I kept dragging the breakup out, but now you know, and even if Peck doesn't know yet, I know that she is already history. I realize you will never take her back. That is why Tanya and I were able to come to you. Rob and I want a child together, and Tanya is craving closeness. Someone else has to provide that aspect of her life until the doctors can diagnose and treat my problem. My marriage will be saved by you sleeping with my wife. Even though I know it seems absurd, you just have to learn to accept the fact that I am aware of it. I was lost for words. I couldn't believe the whole thing because it was so strange. It is killing me that I can't look after my wife, Rob said Tom, looking into his glass before turning to me. But if I lose her, it will destroy me instantly. Really, my friend, I need you to do this for me. Are you reliable? After giving him a quick look, I nodded in agreement. On Sunday, I invited Tanya, Tom, and 3 other couples to a barbecue. Tanya and I went upstairs to my bedroom after the other couples had left and went into the study to play on my computer. When I got undressed, Tanya was already on the bed begging me to hurry up. She started to cry as I climbed onto the bed and leaned towards her. She said, "That's not necessary, baby. I need you now, and I'm ready." I replied firmly, "This is my house, Tanya, and we do things On my bed I leaned forward and explored her carefully, and I aimed for the goal with my lips and fingers. Her gentle breaths and her intimacy inspired me, and my movements became more rhythmic. Her body reacted strongly, and she quickly felt waves of relaxation and relief until her breathing subsided. I stayed by her side and gave her gentle support. "That was incredible," she said in a barely perceptible whisper. "But I need you now." Her restrained support drove me forward, and we had a moment of growing passion with each other. As we moved together, her presence gave me support, and she held on tightly to me. Our bond grew stronger with every second and culminated in a mutually satisfying climax. Then I carefully moved her into a new position. Everything was in line with our common goal. I smiled gently as I looked down at her and felt content and grateful while we were sleeping together, and PCK was avoiding it. This woman must be stupid or crazy. It was clear to me that Tom knew Tanya was very passionate. The third time before I spotted her, and Tom walking to her car, she was fighting to get away from me. We all agreed it had been a wonderful day, and that we should do it again soon after. Tom shook my hand and Tanya gave me a kiss on the cheek. Anyone watching would have thought we were talking about the barbecue. John Abbott from the Callis Agency met with me on Monday afternoon. "Every time I do one of these cases, I hope it is just a misunderstanding and nothing has happened, but there's no doubt about it," he added as he handed me the report. "Our appearance in court, if it goes to trial, is also covered by her fee." After I shook his hand and left the office, I realized on the way home that I was not as angry as I had expected. It was probably because I had already accepted it was true, and I had already formed an opinion when I received the report. How would I react to this? Nothing I hadn't already planned to do. Close the line of credit before PCK found out was the only thing left to do before it was too late. I would consult a lawyer, gather the necessary documents, and wait to file until I was fully prepared. Over the next 5 weeks, we visited Tom and Tanya 3 or 4 times a week, either at their home or mine. They spread the word that they were spending time with me to cheer me up. Because I was going through a difficult time, I stopped asking Peck how she was, and when she would be coming home, although she still checked in with me once a week. Finally, I had enough. After I stopped writing checks on the line of credit, I moved out of the house, got an apartment, and filed divorce papers with Peck. The papers said irreconcilable differences, not infidelity. I arranged everything so that Peck would not find out that I knew about White. She would probably interpret it as an attempt to persuade her to come back home. After she called me and sent me a meaningless message about my overreaction, she would most likely suggest we go out for a meal and a drink to calm me down and bring me to my senses. I would agree to meet her, listen to her, and then tell her I would think about it. I would have a few days to learn the bank and savings accounts and pay off the loan. Everything went according to plan. She contacted me first and told me I was being unreasonable and a lawyer was not necessary. I informed her that I had had enough of being neither here nor there. It is time for me to accept that you do not want to be with me and move on. I accepted her invitation to meet at Angelo's. She looked so good. I knew I would miss her. God willing, I would do it, because I could see that I still loved her. It was the first time I had seen her since she left me. However, I knew that I could never live with her again, even if she came back to me. But instead of telling her that, I just sat there and listened to her talk more nonsense. She informed me that Peck was making good progress and that she was seeing a therapist to help her understand blah blah blah. She claimed she just needed a little more time. It's hard for me too, but I know it's hard for you, sweetie. Just give me a little more time, please, sweetie. I promised to think about it and report back to her. After 2 days of waiting, I called my lawyer and told him it was time to move on. He told Peck the divorce was annulled and withdrew the petition. I wouldn't regret it, Peck remarked when she called me from work to thank me. She didn't know why, but I smiled because I knew I didn't regret it. Soon she would regret it. I went to Tom and Tanya's for dinner that night. After dinner, Tanya and I sneaked into her bedroom. "Can we make love tonight instead of just having sex?" she said as she spread the blanket for me. "I want to make love to the father of my child." "Are you sure?" "Yes, of course. I found out on Tuesday through a home test, and this afternoon the doctor confirmed it. You were going to be a father." It was gently sensitive and really satisfying, but we only did it once that evening. After that, I told her I might not see her for a while this week. I want to finish up this fars with Peak and White, and I will probably have to spend some time out of town. Love, do and take harsh measures. I need the father of my child nearby. Tom, do you think you need to start seeing him in that light? Love, you know what I mean. You are still necessary to Me even if I get what I want. Adam White was a member of the Fraternal Order of Eagles and had not missed a single meeting since being appointed Sergeant at Arms after speaking to a number of influential members who gave him confidence in his chances of a higher position within the order. He left the meeting on Wednesday feeling good. As he got out of his car in the parking lot of his apartment building, he was still in good spirits. After locking the car door and turning around, he felt an unbearable pain. Just before everything went dark, a neighbor spotted him and called 911. The paramedics took him to the hospital, where they found that his arms and legs were broken and his equipment was so badly damaged that both bells had to be removed. When he opened his eyes in a hospital room and saw that he was unable to move, he was in unbearable pain. He was put in a splint and had both arms and legs put in casts. He saw Peggy standing by his bed looking at him in horror before he passed out. Again, I was not there, of course, but when a man came and I was given a detailed description of what had happened, Peggy stood by the bed and looked at White as he approached her. After she confirmed that she was Margaret Olson, the man handed her some documents and explained that she had been served. When she opened the letter, she was shocked to find that she was being sued for divorce, this time for infidelity. She stared at the word infidelity before turning to the broken man on the bed in front of her. When she realized what that meant, a panicked look crept across her face, and she turned pale. "Oh my God," she groaned. She sank down into a chair and began to crying. "I was asked by the police where I had been that night. It turned out I was at a poker game that started an hour before the Eagles game and continued for another hour after White was taken to the hospital. My alibi was paid for by Peck, but she didn't know about it. I thanked her, even though the guys would have given me their support for free. I gave Bill and Steve digital cameras, and a hardware store charged her Visa for the laptop. I gave Mike and the 19-inch flat screen. I gave Phil. eBay charged her MasterCard. The aluminum baseball bat was even paid for by her. I went on vacation for 2 months. I went fishing in Mexico after the police were satisfied that I had nothing to do with White's sad incident. Before I left, I instructed my lawyer to drop the matter and not pursue the divorce unless Peck objected, in which case we would end the matter. I would no longer be with her, but we would still be married. As I once met during the week, I checked in with Tom and Tanya. They told me that Peck had returned to the house since Peck never returned to him after the papers were delivered to her by his hospital bed. They may have concluded that true love was not in her future. She must have realized that the checking and savings accounts were empty, the credit limit was maxed out, and the certificates of deposit in the bank safe were fake. When the credit card statements arrived, Peck then began frantically searching for me, but no one was able to tell her where I was. She found out from my employer, who was aware of the situation, that I had resigned. He said that one day I just showed up, declared my intention to leave, and demanded my last pay. He made her believe that I had suddenly left, even though he had not said it out loud. She found out that I had paid my lawyer and dropped the divorce proceedings, and that he was no longer my lawyer after she called him and asked for a meeting. There was nothing else she could have done. 4 months after I left for my fishing trip, she filed for bankruptcy. After leaving the house lost, she eventually had to give up her Lexus and drive a used Geo. When I returned from Mexico, I found an apartment on the other side of town and tried to stay away from places where she could see me. We picked up where we left off because Tanya was 5 months pregnant and even more beautiful than before. She slept at my place 2 or 3 times a week, or I slept at her place. And this time we didn't have to worry about anyone watching me. After about 2 months, PCK found out I had come back, and one day she was waiting for me in the parking lot. When I got home from work, I ignored her getting in my car and driving out of the parking lot, but she got out of hers and started walking towards me. I slowed down enough so I didn't lose sight of her. When I saw in my rear view mirror her hurrying back to her car, I was ready to talk to her, but not in the office parking lot. After driving at a speed that allowed her to easily follow me, I pulled into the parking lot of Bud's Grill and Bar. About 10 minutes later, when she parked, I was already inside and ordered a Bud Light. While I was waiting for her, the bar sat down. She came and looked around, saw me, and walked towards me. As she got closer, she was already saying something. "You bastard, don't think you're going to get away from me." I knew what Peck was up to because I knew her. I grabbed her wrist. As I turned on my bar stool, she groaned in pain as I squeezed as hard as I could and said, "Don't push me too far, Peck. I have every reason to wish you ill if you don't want to be in real Pain, keep your hands to yourself. I didn't run away from you, I replied, and let go of her hand so you could follow me here. I drove carefully and cautiously. I didn't want to hear about your personal problems. In the parking lot of my workplace, everyone already knows you. An adulteress. So it doesn't matter here. I'd like to talk to you. I'd rather not talk to you. I've had enough of your lies. I want my money back, Peck. What kind of money are you talking about? Half of everything else plus the money. You stole from the residence. I wanted it, and it was mine. Now, Peck, you don't understand my point. After all, this is compensation for what you did to me. When a lawyer files a lawsuit, what do you call it? Compensation for lost marital rights, heartache, and suffering. I believe that what I took almost makes up for the pain and suffering you put me through while you were having sex with another woman. I hadn't had sex for a year and a half, and I was embarrassed that everyone I knew thought I was a fool. Because of you, I lost my family home. Rob you. LL be damned. Oh, please, PCK, you moved in with another man, so it can't have meant much to you. I want my money. It's not about him. I have bad news for you, Peggy. I won't give you a dime. I made you pay after you got caught trying to cheat on me, except it will wait for court, Peck. It doesn't matter what they say. This is how it's going to work. To get a court order to divide the property, you need to hire a lawyer and sue me. I will file a counterclaim. Once you do that, they will hire your lawyer for the entire pay. 6 to a month that a good lawyer can drag out the case. They have the money to pay them and get nothing in return. I have all the evidence. I need to take them to court, and the only time they will have problems is if I prevail. If the court orders me to divide the assets, that would be my worst case scenario. I say, okay, file a judgment and turn to leave you and your lawyer. Keep waiting for the money, but it never arrives because I don't answer. When you call your lawyer, who you are still paying, goes back to court and gets an order that requires me to pay by a certain date. When the deadline expires, you and your lawyer are still waiting, and you have not received a cent from me. Your lawyer goes back to court and gets a judgment against me that charges you for their time. I have no checking or savings accounts that they can take over. They cannot touch my car because it is red. They cannot take anything from me because my apartment is furnished. They can only garnish my income with a judgment, and I will quit my job as soon as my salary is withheld. What are we doing here? Years of spending on legal fees for maybe a few $100s from a single paycheck. All you have to do is approach the judge and get him to threaten me with jail for contempt of court. If I don't comply with his orders, I'm going to live in a small fishing village in Mexico until I run out of money, and all you're going to get, PCK, is a postcard from me, and thanks to you, I have enough to last a long time. Come on, Peggy. I got even with you after you were caught cheating. Consider yourself lucky. Consider yourself really lucky considering what happened to your partner. He will never be able to sleep with another man's wife again because he lost his balls. But they are still free to play with anyone they want. I was aware of that. I knew they were involved in Adam's ordeal, Peck. There is a big difference between what you think you know and what you can prove. By the way, how is your little relationship going? You haven't seen the poor guy since he was hospitalized. What's the point? The only thing he had was taken from him by you. Even for to you, it's cruel, PCK. That's the reality. Even though he was a wonderful lover and very wealthy, I would have had enough of him at some point and gone home. God, I wish I'd known, Peck. If I'd known you were coming back to me, I could have saved myself all this trouble. Damn it, my actions must have ruined everything. Right. This regret will stay with me forever. If only we could have communicated better, then life would have been so much happier. You are capable of becoming such an idiot. You are a useless, cheap PCK. I said take care as I got up and left the bar after finishing my drink 3 days later.